So this time we have Brijesh. Thank you so much for joining in. Uh, Glad that you are here. So to give you a brief, like how we will do this is we'll jump into your journey and we'll ask few questions, and there will be a round of rapid fire that we will do in the end, right? So that is how we will be doing it. Uh,
Cool, cool.
so so basically, like I know you pretty well, uh, and have basically few glimpse of your journey as well, but would love to know, like, how was your overall journey till now, and uh, how did you started Segwise, right? uh, and a a brief about your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think I'm very happy to be I think, hopefully the first one. I don't know how you will release this, but yeah. Uh, but it's been a fun journey so far with Segwise and overall as well. Uh, just to summarize what I've done so far, uh, this is my third attempt at starting a company. Uh, Retrospectively, the first two attempts looked hilarious.
Hmm.
As a 33-year-old looking back at attempts at 23 and 25 look quite comical. But I think all of those helped me to get to where I am. So my first startup was right inside college when I was in my fourth year. It was called Tune Patrol. It was a music streaming startup which wanted to help uh, people get exposed to alternative music, not like anything apart from Bollywood is what we were trying to build, like a destination to stream those kind of music.
Hmm.
Uh, Very classic early 20s idea, I would say. Like, hey, like, there should be a place where people can come listen to cool music.
Hmm.
Bollywood is not cool. Uh, and that like ended up sort of not going too far. But thankfully, that led to uh, like after that company was done, I was looking for okay, what do I do next? And one of the folks who is an investor and continues to be an advisor even till date and is also an investor in Segwise.
Hmm.
His name is Abhinav Kushraj. He was from a BITS Pilani grad. So he's also an alumni from BITS Pilani. So he told me that hey, you should look into this thing called product management. And
Okay.
this was 2013. PMing in India was not at all big. Uh,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it was so small that I think there were only probably two companies hiring product managers at that point in time. One was InMobi and the other one was Flipkart, most likely.
Hmm.
So he knew somebody at InMobi, so he knew the product head at InMobi, and he said you should go chat with them
Hmm.
and see if you can join them as a PM. Uh, so literally couple of weeks before the interview, I started reading up about what does a product manager do, uh, like what does this job even mean, and then went for the interview, got the job, had an amazing time at InMobi for 2.5 years. Uh, like life comes a full circle, I guess, because the first job at InMobi I had was managing a product called App Publish. It was basically helping companies, largely gaming studios, publish their apps to non-Google Play app stores. So I dealt
Hmm.
with a lot of game studios in
Hmm.
2013.
Hmm.
Even after that, InMobi's majority of InMobi's clients were game studios. It's an ad
Hmm.
network, so one of the largest customers of ad networks tend to be gaming companies. So ended up seeing a lot of them while I was there. My first gaming conference was also at InMobi, which I'm going back to this year after 10 years. I'm going back to Gamescom Cologne. So yeah, it's that was the first job. From there, I went uh, to another startup.
Yeah.
So me and my marketing uh, like counterpart at InMobi both decided that you know there should be an app which is what I would best describe as a love child of Foursquare and Instagram.
Hmm.
And again, classic 25-year-old problem in life. Hey, I know that there are a lot of cool things happening around me in the city, but there is no way for me to know it, right?
Hmm.
So people are posting on Instagram of all the cool things that they're doing,
Hmm.
but there's no way for me to search, right? I
Right.
can't go anywhere and say, hey, show me all the fun stuff that are happening in HSR right now, and I want a
Hmm.
visual uh, like result for that query.
Hmm.
Uh, this is still unsolved. I feel like the closest thing that has come to solving this is SnapMap inside Snapchat,
Hmm.
but it's not a great sort of solution, I would say. There's a French company which is also trying to do this now called When. Shout out to them and Manan. They're also now called Putting Scenes, I think. But yeah, so that was like the second idea. That also didn't go too far.
Hmm.
And I ended up sort of joining this company called Hike Messenger.
Sorry, which
Hike
one?
Me- it's called
Hike,
Hike
hike, hike,
Messenger.
hike. Okay, okay, yeah.
Uh, Hike Messenger was one of the biggest consumer success stories of
Hmm.
that era. Like when I joined Hike, we had 13 million daily active users, which was
Hmm.
like crazy for
Crazy big, yeah.
2015, 16. And this was pre-Geo, right? So
Hmm.
imagine pre-Geo, you're dealing with like 10 million plus DAU. Uh, Hike is actually where I learned all the consumer PMing I know. Uh, because InMobi was a B2B company, so largely operated like a B2B PM for those 2.5 years, where you would ship things that are most relevant for making your
Hmm.
biggest customers happy.
Hmm.
But Hike is when I truly started behaving like a consumer PM, where lot of emphasis on data, a lot of emphasis on experimentation. Uh,
Hmm.
and a fun fact about Hike also is that Hike's entire product team was somewhat created by acquiring this gaming company called Tiny Mogul. Tiny Mogul was basically a studio, gaming studio,
Hmm.
which was filled with Zynga people.
Hmm.
So Hike acquired Tiny Mogul, and all of those people who were at Tiny Mogul ended up at Hike, and then there were a bunch of other Zynga people who also ended up at Hike. So
Hmm.
I learned all the PMing I know from people who PM'd at Zynga.
Hmm.
So the way I got brought up as a PM, literally in the formative years of my job, was like thinking like a gaming PM. And within gaming PMs, I guess like Zynga folks would be like best in class. So I learned from folks like Anirban, who's now the Ola electric product lead,
Hmm.
Ranjit, who did a lot of good work at Byju's, uh, Anshumani Rudra, who was like heading Q Math and now who's at Google. So all the folks who I met at Hike have now become like amazing consumer product leaders. Bhavik, Sumit, who went
Hmm.
to Moonfrog. Uh, so yeah, like I got to learn from all of these people, which I think was amazing, and I was still very grateful that Hike happened.
Hmm.
Uh, from Hike, again, Anirban, who was my boss at Hike, went and joined Dunzo uh,
Hmm.
as their product lead, and he immediately called me saying, "Hey, I've joined this company called Dunzo." And I already knew Dunzo. I was one of the earliest users of Dunzo,
Hmm.
uh, and it was one of those apps which made my life so much better in Bangalore.
Hmm.
I mean, Dunzo was almost like a Bangalore's long-held secret that you
Hmm.
would come to Bangalore, you would experience Dunzo, and you'd feel like, oh wow, what a city. It was almost as much of a bragging point as the weather in 2018. So I was very happy to sort of work at Dunzo, and I remember like when I joined Dunzo, I was like, I'll do everything in my power to ensure that this does not go away. Like this
Hmm.
convenience was so amazing that I really wanted this to exist. And when I was joining, obviously, like it was like we were just raised money from Google, so we just done our Series A,
Hmm.
and the likelihood of making that math work was obviously very hard. Like
Hmm.
crazy idea to begin with that hey, you can order whatever you want and we deliver it within like X minutes. But it was exciting, so I ended up joining Danzo. I was the first person in the product team after Anirban. Joined at about 100K, I think, monthly orders, left after the Reliance round.
Hmm.
So saw the journey from, I think when I joined, it was like 30 million valuation to like 800 after the Reliance round. Uh, After the Reliance round, I felt like, okay, it's done. Like how can it, like my job here is done. Now it's just execution from here. We have the biggest brand in the country behind us. So
Hmm.
I'm leaving the company on a good note and in a safe place. But yeah,
Hmm.
life had other plans.
Then
Yeah,
after
so
that, you went to Fampay.
yeah, Fampay again. I think when I was thinking of leaving Danzo, Danzo had become a fairly large company. So I'm not a
Hmm.
large company person.
Hmm.
I have come to realize that my sweet spot is like Series A to Series CD. I think that's
Hmm.
where I am most effective as a product growth leader.
Hmm.
Uh, Beyond a certain number of people, every company becomes a large company, and large companies need a different kind of people to sort of like keep the machinery moving
Yep.
in the right direction. I'm not
Absolutely.
that person.
Hmm.
At least I haven't been forced to become that person. Maybe,
Hmm.
hopefully, Segwise will be the company that will make me become that person.
Yeah.
Uh, so I left Anzu and I went back looking for a smaller company. And Fampay was, again, super exciting thesis.
Hmm.
Uh, this is, I think, 2021. UPI was already big and the market was largely occupied by like three people.
Hmm.
PhonePay, Google Pay, and I think
Hmm.
Paytm and Cred was still coming
Hmm.
up the ranks. Uh, so if you had to like think about, okay, how do I create another play in UPI? Like, how do I break this like dominance by three sort of companies? And it wasn't even three back then. It was almost like a duopoly between PhonePay and Google Pay.
Hmm.
Uh, One exciting thesis was that, okay, what if I undercut? Like, if you follow F1, undercut is like a classic strategy where you sort of come from behind and sort of like take over eventually. Uh, so we were trying to do that. That what if I catch the user at 15, hold on to the user until they turn 22, and if
Hmm.
I do this really well, at some point I would have cut off your source of new acquisition,
Hmm.
right?
Makes
Like
sense.
every 22-year-old is on my app and there is no other 22-year-old for you to acquire. So over a period of time, I become the big UPI brand for young India.
Hmm.
Uh, Incredibly bold thesis. Uh, we executed it fairly well also. Like I joined Fampy at like, I think 100K again, about 100K users. And I think by the time I left, they had gone past like 2 million at least users
Hmm.
in terms of uh, app open users at least. They're still
Hmm.
one of the biggest UPI apps in the country. MPCI publishes like numbers on their website. I think the last time I checked, Fampay is like sixth largest in terms of number of transactions.
Hmm.
But obviously, it was never a revenue thesis, right? It was like
Hmm.
a very long revenue thesis that, hey, you will continue to invest for 7 years and in the seventh year, you'll start seeing signs of having access to monetizable users. But it
Hmm.
was a very long thesis.
Hmm.
But it's also the kind of thesis, that we see like would ideally like, right? Because
Hmm.
it's those, if true, very big kind of
Hmm.
thesis. Which is why I think that they kind of raised the money that they did. Uh, but obviously like markets changed in 2023 and like revenue became like more important than growth, and any
Hmm.
thesis that needed 5, 6, 7 years to start showing signs of revenue was not really something that the market wanted uh, to look at. uh, and it was also the same time around which me and Shobit, who's my co-founder here, who was the CTO at Fampay, uh,
Hmm.
both of us had been fiddling around with thoughts about, okay, uh, this whole AI boom is coming. Where do we see it affecting areas that we know deeply?
Hmm.
And one of the areas that we did sort of see deeply is this growth journey in Fampay, where it went from like 100K to like 20x in like a
Hmm.
small period of like 12 to 16 months. And we saw all the chaos that that kind of growth brings.
Right.
Uh, and we were like, hey, look, we were very lucky because we had raised like some crazy amount of money to be able to hire people to make that kind of growth happen.
Hmm.
But can AI help much smaller teams execute the way we did, like with
Hmm.
much like lesser number of people involved? Because a lot of the tasks that we did as the product growth team in Fampay felt like tasks that could be automated with AI. Because if you can write, like in our heads, the thought process was that if I can write a very clear SOP for a task, then it feels like that task in the future will be done by AI.
Hmm.
And for product growth, specifically for consumer apps, which are fully digital, like whether it is fintech, and now we are focused on gaming, where all the tasks are like digital, it felt like an AI could actually execute it end to end,
Makes
where
sense.
like by looking at data, figuring out what it should do, and then actually going ahead and doing that task. So we felt like we could build basically a growth team in a box for
Hmm.
every consumer app in the world, starting with games. Uh,
Hmm.
and that's how we ended up creating Segwise, where we said, okay, let's attempt that. And we went after the first one or two use cases of a growth team. So root causing metrics is like one of the most frequent use cases for a fast growing game. So we said, okay, let's automate root causing. The
Hmm.
second most important thing is outlier detection, like knowing if there are small pockets of users who are doing really well or really poorly on any growth metric like retention or conversion or revenue or whatever. You want to know when that's happening so that you can act on those insights faster. So those are the two use cases that we started with. Uh, Built Segwise. I think the V1 of Segwise was built completely by Shubhit,
Right.
which was built on top of Slack. There was not even a UI, but it was enough to sort of like show the world what this could potentially be. Raised money from our common investor, Powerhouse Ventures. Uh, also got supported by folks like Bloom, Antler, and a couple of other funds in the US like Saka everywhere. So we raised about 1.6 million. Built a team and then shipped our first version in October of 23. Got our first paying customer by December. Then spent 3 months figuring out who's our ICP, what is our GTM motion, like what is going to potentially work for us. And then after
Hmm.
that soul searching exercise, arrived at, hey, gaming is who we should go after. And that's how we started focusing a lot more on game studios in the last couple of months.
Hmm.
And yeah, we currently work with about 15 to 20 game studios at various stages of the pipeline.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's been the story so far.
No, no, thank you so much, Brijesh. It was a very deep, insightful story. So, being like you were working in a B2C companies, mostly you have worked as a B2C company, right? And you decided to become a B2B company. How did that like have changed your thought process per se? Because uh, if you see, working in a B2C company, you need to think about users, right? From the perspective of, okay, that how I will be able to change the LTV, how can I basically improve retention, how can I improve my uh, basically daily active users. But in B2B, the thought process is actually a little different when you are selling to a business, right? But I understand that actually the product that you are building is going to solve the problem of B2C company. So you need to like have the balance of both the words, right? B2B as well as B2C, right? So how do
Yeah.
you keep that balance, and how did you got motivated that you can build a B2B company, you can sell this software to others.
Yeah, I mean, I think I keep joking to a lot of investors and friends that this is the only B2B company that I will ever build. Like it's the B2B company that is selling to me, essentially.
Hmm.
It's a very deeply personal problem that we
Hmm.
are trying to solve for. I have
Hmm.
seen this problem multiple times, like at Dunzo, at Fampay, to some
Hmm.
extent, a lot of extent at Hike and InMobi also. Like I said,
Hmm.
even though InMobi was a B2B company, we were serving B2C customers again.
Right, right.
Uh, so I understand that universe really well, and the only kind of B2B company that I would ever build is something that solves the problem of a product growth person in a B2C company. And
Hmm.
this is that. Uh, it wasn't really a like I honestly didn't know the like problems of a B2B universe.
Hmm.
Like I think a lot of things caught me by surprise,
Hmm.
especially I think the biggest change that I've had to make as a founder in B2B
Hmm.
is the speed of feedback is much slower.
Hmm.
Uh, and the cycles are much longer, right? Like, for
So feedback,
example,
when you say, is the customer feedback is slower.
I would say experimentation feedback. Like the
Hmm.
experimentation cycles in
Hmm.
B2C are one day. Like if you're
Hmm.
operating at like some reasonable scale, uh,
Hmm.
whatever, if I have a hypothesis today, tomorrow morning I will know if that was true or false.
Hmm.
Uh, but in B2B, a lot of hypotheses you can't crunch like beyond like a certain amount of time. Like for
Hmm.
example, once we got our first paying customer in December,
Hmm.
uh, I needed to find out who is our ICP. So I could list like, hey, these are three hypotheses of who I think can be our ICP. To
Hmm.
validate or invalidate those hypotheses, I need to get 20 meetings with each of those types of users, right? And getting
Hmm.
20 meetings of into 360 meetings and landing 60 meetings is very hard. Like it doesn't happen. Like I can't
Hmm.
give you an answer tomorrow. It will take a few months. Every week I'll get a few meetings, right? So I think that's what I mean by experimentation cycles are much longer in B2B
Hmm.
than they are in B2C. And that's the biggest thing that I had to sort of adjust to because my brain was so wired for the consumer universe that it almost felt like a withdrawal symptom, right? Like where I was not getting enough feedback uh, from like my experiment, whether it's working or not working. And I remember I used to talk to you because you had a lot of prior B2B experience and you used to tell me like, no, this is normal. Like this is how this universe operates. This is not absurd. This is not you. You don't need to worry. And same thing with our investors as well. I think I'm very happy that we got Powerhouse as our investor because they have seen a lot of B2B and in our board meetings, they would remind me that, hey, like it's okay. This is like you're actually doing really well.
Hmm.
In a B2B universe, your trajectory is like actually quite fast. Like in 3 months,
Hmm.
you shipped. In 3 months, you had your first paying customers. In 3 months, you've figured out who your ICP is. So from a B2B timeline perspective, you guys are doing really well.
Hmm.
But in my head, it always feels a lot
It is slow.
slower than like it is
No,
what
no,
I'm
you're right.
comfortable.
I've seen your thought process at that time. Like you come, like you came to me and asking ki yaar, how slow these things are, and we used
Yeah,
to talk about that. So like absolutely, you're right that in B2B word you need to be like more patient around uh what about the results that you are getting, and you need to be cognizant about the process that you are in, right? You need to complete that process as well, because it will take some time, but you can actually predict what you want, right? I think prediction is uh much easier in B2B segment as compared to a B2C segment, right? Is what I feel, right? uh
I
so like
wouldn't agree.
okay, so like the basic challenges that you would say when you actually are running a B2B company, the basic challenges that every B2B founder, and you are a new B2B founder, right, you are struggling with, and you need as a founder you might be needing help with?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge was to sort of understand these channels and what works for the B2B universe very quickly. Like
Hmm.
I remember even, for example, setting up our first outbound campaign was a pain.
Hmm.
Like the tool was terrible. It was
Hmm.
very non-intuitive.
Hmm.
Uh, it it took us a coach. Thankfully, Bloom helped us get a coach who would help, like who ran us through like how this works, help us set
Hmm.
up the first outbounding tool that we
Hmm.
ended up using, uh, told us how to write like these emails, told us
Hmm.
what works, what doesn't work, what kind of cadences work. Uh,
Hmm.
all of that, yes, you could potentially find all of these resources on the internet and arrive at this answer yourself, but it just takes time. And I think as a new founder in the space, uh, like all of this was like hard for me at least, and I had to sort of. I'm glad I found uh, people like Ravi from Ravi who advises Bloom founders on GTM to help out with like all of these tasks very quickly, so that we at least get going on this. Uh, that was like I think the most challenging part because product building is actually I feel simpler in B2B because
Hmm.
on the other side you have a very competent person giving you answers, right? Like one of the biggest advantages of B2B is like in my case, right? I have a PM on the other side or a founder on the other side. If I
Right.
ask them like, hey, is this a problem? They'll give me a very good answer. Like if you ask the
Hmm.
question in the right way, in a non-leading way, you can get very good insights by just talking to 10 people.
Right.
Whereas if you're building a large user base B2C app, it's very difficult to say if the opinion of five people holds true for like more people. So you need data. So which is why B2C sort of founders and PMs need to be very data driven, and B2B founders can be perceptive, can get away with just like user research. You don't need to do crazy amount of data work, at least to begin
Hmm.
with. Uh, so I think product building was not hard for us, but GTM definitely just getting going on like trying to attempt to set up experiments for our GTM motion was
Hmm.
quite new. And I don't think the current tools make it very intuitive for a new person to get going.
No, no, makes sense. And I want to like understand, how do you put like these two teams? There are like growth teams in B2C companies. There are sales team or revenue teams in B2B companies. Correct. What do you think? Like how the thought process is actually different from a growth team versus a revenue team of a B2B or B2C?
I mean, at the end of the day, everything is a funnel, right? Like it's, I look at it that way now. Like I also had a funnel at Fampay. I also have a funnel here at Segwise. Uh, I just had to understand what improves this funnel, and obviously those are not the same tactics that you would use in a B2C company. Uh, so I honestly think that growth teams basically can abstract everything to like a funnel or a metric or figure out what are the choke points that need to get unblocked for like your user to go from state A to like whatever is the final state that they need to get to. Uh, so I don't think those skills are like non-transferable. I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of the stuff that I've learned in my career as a B2C growth product person are now becoming very useful in the way we set up these experiments.
Right.
Uh, like I said, the only difference is the tooling, the like the cycle of feedback of the experiments,
Hmm.
the volume of like customers that you sort of end up dealing with
Hmm.
uh, to run these experiments. But otherwise, I don't think there is a major difference in the way I sort of think about like driving growth in a B2C company versus driving
Hmm.
growth in a B2B company. It
Hmm.
all can be abstracted to some funnel that needs to move in a certain direction.
Hmm. So how has been your journey now that you have actually you're doing founder sales, right? People say, okay, founder
Yeah.
needs to do this sales, and you're building your own outbound funnels. You're building your own uh, meetings. You're going and talking to people, explaining the product. Like, how do you think it has impacted your persona, and whether it is easy or difficult, in what sense?
Uh, I feel like I think it's fun and it should be fun for
Hmm.
founders. Uh, Largely because you're going and chatting about your product,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
or you're going and chatting about a problem that you care about because you're
Hmm.
building a company to solve
Around
that
it.
problem, which
Yeah, yeah.
in some way I can assume that you also sort of like care about that problem or you have a lot of opinions on that problem. Uh, so from the time I have changed my perspective of like, hey, sales is not this thing, when non salespeople imagine sales, they imagine the most stereotypical
Hmm.
sales process, right? Like it
Hmm.
almost feels like a car sales guy who's trying to sell you like a car which is clearly broken.
Hmm.
That's not what we are doing, right?
Hmm.
We as like founders are very deeply passionate about some problem
Hmm.
and we feel that that problem should not exist
Right.
and we feel that our solution does a good job at making sure that that problem doesn't happen to you. So
Absolutely.
when you shift the perception of sales to like, hey, I am getting time to go and like chit chat about this problem
Hmm.
uh, with this other person who also cares about this problem, then it almost seems like a scam job, right? Like
Hmm.
at this point, I feel like I would have spoken to PMs about growth like for free. Like I
Hmm.
love chatting to PMs and founders about growth.
You're in the right job, bro.
Yeah, so I'm like, I would have done this for free. I'm now getting paid to do it. That's
Hmm.
amazing. And I feel like that's very important for
Hmm.
founders. Like, this is what I think most people mean by founder market fit. Like,
Right.
because it is so hard. Like,
Hmm.
and like it, I can't imagine. Like, let's say I'm building a security company.
Hmm.
I can't have conversations in an interesting fashion about. I have no interest in security,
Hmm.
right? Like, I cannot talk to anybody about security,
Hmm.
right? Uh, So I shouldn't build that company because I will not have the energy to go and have these conversations with people about that topic because I don't care
Hmm.
about that topic. And I have realized that it's very easy to know when the other person does not care enough about that topic. Like when you
Hmm.
get on, like, and that's the difference between founder-led sales and whenever you
Hmm.
hire your like actual
A's, yeah.
sales team for the first
Sales team,
time,
yes.
there will be a dip,
Hmm.
right? And there's this amazing person that I follow on Twitter
Hmm.
uh, who runs this sales agency called Jellyfish.
Hmm.
Uh, she says that the founder will always be the best salesperson in the company,
Hmm.
regardless of how large the company is.
Hmm.
Because I don't, it's impossible to find another person
Hmm.
who will care about this problem as much and who can speak
Absolutely.
about it with like as much enthusiasm as a founder can.
Hmm.
So I don't like when people told me like, hey, you should do founder led sales, you should do founder led sales. I was like, why are people saying this? Like,
This
and
is the
the
most
reason,
common thing that a founder can do, right?
yeah, and I feel like it's almost like a filtering criteria for you to know if like your company will sort of become big, because this is that step where you find out whether you are okay to spend the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years talking about this problem. I am happy to speak about PMing and growth for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Uh, and the question is, are you? And I think founder led sales is like a great sort of like
Hmm.
filtering criteria. And you
Hmm.
should all do it not because your VC is asking you to do it. You should do it
Hmm.
because it's a great way for you to find out if this is the company that you want to spend your
Hmm.
life building.
Yep. So, now that you have started selling, right, and you believe in founder led sales, uh how how are you structuring your team? Like now, I know that till PMF probably every founder will try to sell by themselves, and that is what, like, we have been told and what we have learned, right? But do you think it makes sense to basically have someone uh who can basically help you get more sales, or like areas where you think there are help needed for the founders to basically, because we as founders have multiple jobs to do, right? And we wear multiple hats at approximately like every level, right? So what do you think, like, are there areas where we can basically get more help into? And with the AI coming in, are there any opportunities that you think that other founders can tap into?
Yeah, I mean, see, I look at it like I said, I have abstracted everything to a funnel.
Hmm.
And now I can translate your question to how do I crunch my experimentation cycle?
Hmm.
Like, what are the things that I will always want to do sales,
Hmm.
but I want to do my sales experiments faster,
Hmm.
right? That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to not do sales. I'm just looking to do sales experiments in a faster way.
Hmm.
Now, let's break that into like steps, right? Step one
Hmm.
is, let's assume that you have an ICP hypothesis. And
Hmm.
like, if you are not already at that stage where you know exactly who your ICP is, you will have a few hypotheses
Hmm.
on who that person is. Now, the only way to like validate whether that ICP is correct or not is by reaching out to them and trying to get a conversation with that
Hmm.
person, and then trying to do a qualification call to see if what you're thinking is correct or not correct.
Hmm.
Uh, Now, there are two steps between you wanting to talk to somebody and them showing up for a call.
Hmm.
You need to find like a bunch of these people that you can reach out to
Hmm.
who match the criteria that you've come up with. And
Right.
that's now a chore. Like in our
Hmm.
universe, that's a chore. There is no, like, once I've told you, hey, I want, like, for in our example, like, hey, I want to speak to product managers, performance marketing folks, and founders of gaming studios who have a game which did anywhere between 50,000 downloads to 500,000 downloads in the last 30 days. Let's say that's
Hmm.
now, after I've given you this information, getting me this list is a chore activity,
Hmm.
right? There's no like brain power that is needed to go fetch this information. It's a
Hmm.
manual task
Hmm.
that I feel like AI should be able to do really well. Once you
Hmm.
know who it is that
Hmm.
this person wants to talk to,
Hmm.
going and fetching that information from various different sources
Hmm.
and then giving me a list
Hmm.
is like something that today takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
Tomorrow, I'm hoping it will not take so much time,
Right.
because today it's a manual process where I have to sit down or get an
Hmm.
intern to sort of help me sort of create this list of people,
Hmm.
look at like three different sources, because not one source will have all the emails, not one
Hmm.
source will have all the ICP filtering criteria.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of manual work, right? So if you
Hmm.
crunch this time to zero, then now my
Hmm.
experimentations can happen faster, right?
Hmm.
Second step is, okay, now I have a list,
Hmm.
right? Now I need to get this person to show up on a call, and let's say I need to then write to them or communicate with them in some way or the other,
Hmm.
right? I know what I want to say. I just want to or maybe I don't know what to say, and I have three, four hypotheses on what I think I should say, which will lead them to like agreeing to get on a call with me.
Hmm.
Now somebody just needs to now go and execute this experiment, right? Like,
Hmm.
I've told you this is the person. I know these are the four possible things that I could say to him that they would like make them want to show up for this call.
Hmm.
Now it's just about going and doing it. Like go
Hmm.
write this content, reach out to them on email, give them a call, ping them on LinkedIn, like, and do these tasks over and over again until you know, like, A, what kind of communication is working and what kind of people are showing up for these calls. Right? This again takes a lot of time today.
Hmm.
So if you crunch this to zero, then again my experimentation cycle becomes
So
faster.
basically, you're saying something similar to like in B2C companies, you have Facebook, you have Google, you have other
Yeah,
platforms where like you can pump money and get more leads, right?
correct. So if
It,
you think about the equivalent of these two steps in the B2C world,
yeah.
like what step one is, once I know who I want to target, Facebook gives me all the tools in the world to go and define that person. Like, hey,
Right.
I want to target kids, or like, let's say I want to target in, let's say your cred, and you want to target, hey, I want to target people above the age of 30.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
want them to be in like cities. I want them to be working in these kind of companies, etc., etc. Right. So that is solved. Like it hardly takes a day or two for you to do this in the B2C world, but it takes
Hmm.
an insane amount of time to do it in the B2B world. And that's one area where I feel we can crunch that time to zero. Once you,
Hmm.
again, let's say you've agreed and you've created this list. In the B2C world, communicating with them is like a day's job because you'll create ad campaigns, right? You'll
Hmm.
communicate with them on Facebook, on Instagram, on Google, on YouTube, etc. And overnight, you will reach thousands of people who match that criteria.
Correct. Right.
Here again, it's a pain.
Hmm.
Like even though I know exactly who I want to talk to, reaching out to them on channels that businesses you use to sort of talk to you, or like the kind of people that you want to reach, like it's very slow and it's very hard to sort of do that very quickly. So
Hmm.
again, that's another area where I think, we should be able to bring some AI to make this time like
Hmm.
faster.
Hmm. Cool. I think matlab, I can see, I can see your frustration where like coming from a B2C word where like I can give money to Facebook and I can get more leads, talk to them, solve problems. Here in
Yeah,
B2B word, I'm just like doing email marketing and never getting results. Like even there basically I'm struggling. So I can see that basically because it is not solved at that level how Facebook, Google, and others have solved for B2C world, right? Uh,
yeah.
Coming to so you have led team at Fampay. Now that you are leading sales, marketing, and other areas, revenue teams at Segwise, what is your style of basically leading? And are you aggressive, mild aggressive, super aggressive, or like you're not that aggressive? It is like uh, work life balance which your teams get, right? And what it takes for others, there are two questions wrapped into it. The second question would be ki, what will it take for others to join Brijesh's team?
Uh, Yeah, I don't think ek to I'm not leading too many people. I'm largely leading myself at this point because we're a very tiny team on
Hmm.
the sales and growth side. But I don't think my style has changed, right? Like
Hmm.
like I said, my brain is wired for B2C.
Hmm.
Uh, so the way I think about it is that it's in everybody's benefits to know the answer to these experiments as quickly as possible,
Hmm.
right? Everybody wants to enter that phase of the company where its PMF is very clear. Like we know that this
Hmm.
is working, and all companies of our stage are basically trying to get there as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
So obviously the pace of the company is much faster at this stage, and as you become a large company, it slows down because then you're trying to hold on to what is working. Uh,
Hmm.
and but ideally, in a great company, that pace never slows down, and it continues to operate at the same level of urgency as it was when it was a sub 10% company. So I don't think I sort of differentiate like, hey, this is work, this is life. I think that's a bad approach to like think about it. I feel like you should uh, find a very good reason to do a startup as a founder or as an early employee. If you're joining a startup, I always look for why are you doing this, right? Like,
Hmm.
it is very hard. Two, it is extremely stressful. So you have to have a very good selfish answer. Like, I don't buy answers like, hey, I believe in your company, this, that. Like, all of that is rubbish. I need a selfish answer.
Hmm.
Uh, I love answers like, hey, look, nobody will let me do uh, XYZ in a big company. I'm
Hmm.
joining your company because you have no choice. You have to let me do this because you don't have more people.
Hmm.
And because you are going to let me do this, I will sort of learn or accelerate my career much faster than a peer who's not being allowed to do this in a small company. That's largely how I have operated my career as well. Like, I keep looking to join companies which will allow me to do things that I am absolutely not qualified to do.
Hmm.
Uh, like, I was running the entire partner product team at Dunzo at like some crazy scale. I was like, I think 28 or
Hmm.
something like, and I was not supposed to do that. Like, but because my counterpart at Swiggy was like a super senior like person, and I am here like a 28-year-old person trying to run this entire team. Uh, I feel like that's the kind of people I want, like people who are very clear about what they are going to get out of this experience. And the more tangible it is, the better. I love
Hmm.
people who are driven by wealth creation. I love people who are driven by career acceleration. I love like these pre-MBA kids also. Like, why do you want to
Hmm.
work here? If I work here 2 years, if you do well, I get my Harvard MBA. Done. Amazing reason. Uh, because it's such a tangible thing, right? Like, it's very
Hmm.
easy to put your energy behind a
Hmm.
company when you have a very clear reason to sort of work the way you will need to work in an early
Hmm.
stage company. Anybody who says like, early stage is not hard is lying to you. So I won't lie. It's very hard. It's very stressful. Uh, a lot of stress actually comes from ambiguity because you're trying to get to PMF and you don't have it yet. So that phase of ambiguity is what causes all the stress, causes all the panic, causes all the urgency. Uh, by definition, if you're past that stage, you're not a startup, right? Like,
Hmm.
if you're already gotten there, then like somebody else can sort of uh, take over most likely and do a fairly decent job. But this part is hard to sort of get done without these kind of people. So that's what I look for. I look for people with like super selfish reasons uh,
Hmm.
for joining a small company. And within that, if you have like more specific reasons as to why you want to join this particular small company, that's even better. Like, if you have a thesis around why do you think what we're doing is going to become big, or
Hmm.
have you spoken to a few people who have worked with me and hence you want to work with me?
Hmm.
Those are all very legitimate reasons. I think a lot of young people don't reflect when they apply to companies. Like, they just apply because like they see an opening and they apply. But you can do so much better if you put in that little effort to sort of articulate to a founder as to why you want to join their company. Like, be a little more personalized than everyone else. Like, and it's not just a favor that you're doing the founder, it'll also help you understand if you what do you want to get out of this job. Like, at the end of the day, if you're going to spend 2 to 4 years also or in a particular job, you should be very clear as to what you want out of it from a
Hmm.
very personal perspective. And you just need to articulate that and how this company fits into that aspiration.
Makes sense. So we are into our last round. This is the rapid fire round, right? I'll ask you questions quickly, and you need to like give me a one word answer or max 2 word or 3 word answer. Okay.
I will try.
Okay. So the first question is, What's your go-to work playlist genre?
I love EDM, like electronic dance music, Avicii and Kaigo. All of these are like my go-to work music.
Very nice, very nice. So, second question is: you're an early bird, as in you wake up early in the morning, or you're a night owl?
And I'm very early. I wake up at 6:30
Okay.
to
Now
7.
that you are in, you are targeting US, you have to change that. Okay. Third question: if you could have a dinner with a historical figure, right? Who would it be?
I don't know. It's not historical. I would love to have a dinner with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I don't know if you know her. She's obviously like super famous, one of the best comedians that I know.
Okay.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus or Tina Fey. I will take either one.
Okay. Fourth question is like favorite app for staying organized.
I would say it's Slack right now.
Hmm.
I have a self like chat where I think it's the easiest way for me to remember. So I write down what's important for the week
Hmm.
in that chat, and every day I go back to that chat to see, okay, among all the things that I thought was important for the week, like what do I want to work on today?
Hmm.
And that system is doing fairly well. It's also low like maintenance system, no special tools, etc.
Hmm. One word to describe your sales style.
Conversational. Like I just want to chat with TMs. So I just have a
Hmm.
nice conversation, and at the end of it, they usually end up ranting to me. And I'm like, hey, I know how to fix this problem that you just ranted to me about.
Nice. I think that is how you do sales, right? You need to solve others' problems. So yeah, get it. Uh, Next is a name your team calls you when you are not around.
I theoretically I can't answer this question because it's obviously they've never called it to me in my face. No, I
But
don't
you
know. I
can
think
guess. You can guess. You can guess.
no, I don't. So I think all the people who work right now with me have call me BB. I don't call myself BB. None of my friends call me BB, but BB became a thing in Fampay, and since most of our team is ex-Fampay, they continue to call me BB.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's not a name that I have grown to sort of associate myself with, but
Hmm.
it has now become a thing for the last 3 4 years.
Very nice. The last name. I think I will add one question from my side. This is the questions that the team has come up with. One of the best days in Segwise till date and why?
Oh, this is easy. So the day we landed our first customer. So hilariously, uh, we were at a team outing. So this was, I think, almost like 6 months into the journey because 3 months we sort of built fundraise, we won team building, and then 3 months we had design partners and we were like iterating with them to get them to the point. And just before we went to the outing, I had pinged them saying, "Hey, dude, the pilot done. Uh, like this is the price. Let us know." Uh, and we were like, okay, if they say yes, also we will celebrate. If they say no, we will get sad and drink. So regardless, an outing is a good place for this.
Hmm.
So they didn't reply. We were supposed to come back to Bangalore. It's a Sunday morning, and all of us were like sad. Saturday, we just like had a nice drinking session, and Sunday we all wake up. Morning, I see a message saying, "Yeah, yeah, we are going ahead with the subscription," and we like were so happy on that Sunday morning because it is the perfect way to end like our first team outing, which will forever be remembered for the day we got our first paying customer.
Very nice. So last question from my end. Where will you go if you get PMF? Or what will you do once you
What do
get?
you mean?
So let's say, what will you do? Whether you'll party or you'll build more customer, or you don't care because you don't know ki
Yeah,
PMF. How would you know even? whether you have hit PMFs.
So my biggest selfish reason to get to PMF is that I will get to continue the scam job for the rest of my life, right? Like this job where I have to go talk to PMs and make money, I want to do it for the rest of my life. So that's the biggest sort of thing to look forward to. Like PMF would sort of indicate that I get to do this for a really long time and
Hmm.
get paid for it and make other people sort of build their careers around this as well. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I think that day would be like I'd be very happy because then I would be like, okay, now I can do this for a
Hmm.
long, long time.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brijesh. It was fun chatting with you. All like always. Thank you so much again. We'll see you again in the Revrag show.
So, bye.
Bye.
Yeah.